Okay guys, meron akong update sa inyo sa Axie Infinity. Kanina kasi sa Twitter Space nag-uusap si Jiho about sa DeFi, Axie Infinity. Update to, madami din mga nag-question, nagtanong what is RON, etc. about SLP, etc. So yung full version sa YouTube ko na lang. Panoodin nyo na lang yung sinabi nila, it's around 27 minutes. Medyo matagal, hindi kaya dito sa platform natin. Kaya ayun, key by key lang, sigurado ko sa inyo. Una-una, yung concern natin syempre sa SLP. Meron din mga nagtanong regarding dun sa SLP, kailan magpapampulit, kailan tataas kay Jiho. Ngayon, ang sagot naman ni Jiho, madaming mga ways para tumaas ang SLP at hindi naman din sila nakafocus sa pag-pump ng SLP kung hindi i-build ang community. I-build ang sistema, i-build ang program, i-build ang ecosystem nila at yung mga players, Axie Infinity community, kasama na tayo doon. Influencer, YouTuber, TikToker, artist, manager, breeder, player, kayo, scholars, lahat yan. Kasama tayo lahat. Yun ang una-una nilang binibuild nila para ma-balance ang mint at saka yung burn ng SLP at mas madali na lang mag-balance ng ecosystem, mag-balance pag madami ng player, kompleto na lahat ng mga developer. So yung SLP na yan, noong July, nung hindi pwedeng ipasok o papuntahin yung SLP, isend dun sa Binance, tumaas ang presyo. Nung August naman na hindi pwedeng mag-claim ng SLP, mga 2 weeks yata yun, tumaas ang presyo. So madaming way para tumaas ang SLP. Actually, kung sasadyain nila, kayang-kaya nilang gawin yun actually. Pero hindi nga sila nakafocus sa ganun. Kung hindi, long-term ang focus nila. Ito na, kagento ko to. Yan, isa pa yung RON na yan. Ang reason bakit sila meron ng RON Chain Network, ano ba yan? RON Chain Network, yung RON token na yan. Para yan yung Ethereum Network. Diba dati, merong Ethereum Network, kailangan bumili ng Axie, Magmi, etc. Ginagamit mo yung Ethereum. Kaso mahal yung Ethereum, mahal yung gas fee ng Ethereum. Kaya sila gumawa ng sidechain ng RON Chain. So, pag may gagawin kang transaction, RON na ang gagamitin. Kung ano man ang gagawin mo, ang gas fee, ang pambayad doon is RON. So, in short, hindi ka na didepende sa lahat ng kilos mo sa Ethereum. So, pwede na gamitin ng RON. At kung ikaw naman ay developer o kaya programmer, gumagawa ka ng mga program under the RON Chain Network para kung makonect mo sa Axie Infinity, third party ka, kayang-kaya mo nang gawin yon. So, sa update naman ng Axie, kung anong ine-expect natin na update na mangyayari at tataas ang SLP o mag-pump kahit konti man lang, yung origin lang ang nakikita ko. So, yung 4 cards, magiging 6 cards, ile-level up, kaya i-burn yung SLP. So, yun yung mga hinihintay natin, maybe March, April, May. So, hanggang doon, ganun talaga, kailangan nila mag-staking or ng LP token ng RON. Yun lang magagawa natin. At then, mga kapatid, andito tayo under ng Axie Infinity ecosystem. Ano mo papala mo pag naging 2024 na o 2025? Nasaan ka na? Ano na meron sa community? Ikukwento ko naman isa-isa. Then, pakinggan to. Okay, first of all, meron tayong Ronin Wallet. Yung Ronin Wallet na yan, nagpe-play ka ng game sa Axie Infinity at magkakaroon ka ng cryptocurrency nila. Let's say SLP o kung ano man token na meron sila. At yung Ronin Wallet mo sa cellphone mo na yan, pwede mong i-connect sa e-commerce. Yung mga, kunyari, Amazon, meron kang bibilin, pwede mong pambayad yon. Hindi ako nagsasabi lang nito kung hindi kanina sila Jiho dun sa Twitter space nila. Kaya panoodin nyo lang YouTube ko mamaya. Yun ang magaling na ba? Kasi parang meron kang Gcash ang dating. No? Meron kang Ronin Wallet, tapos pumapasok ang cryptocurrency na yun. Tapos yung cryptocurrency na yun, pwede mong pambayad yun sa mga e-commerce, no? Amazon, kung kung Lazada sa Pilipinas, sa Shopee. Pero wala pang specific date ng ganito. Future ang pinag-uusapan natin, 2024, 25, yung mga medyo na-develop ng economy nila. Meron din silang hinire din na economists, yung magagaling experts sa mga economy, what to do, mga ganon. At sinabi din ni Gio, madiin na sinabi niya, ang Axie hindi lang yung card game na yan. So, iba-ibang game din ang papasok. Iba-ibang economic system din ang papasok. Paano nilang ginagawa yun at ano ang ebidensya ko dun. Kaya nga sila gumawa ng RON network RON chain, RON network. Pwede ka mag-develop ng mga program. Sabi din ni Gio kasi dun, hindi kaya ng Sky Mabis yun alone. Mag-build ng lahat ng mga program dun. Kailangan nilang third party din. Meron silang gagawin na land game. Yung land game na yun, may makukuha kang token doon. Gagawin nila din yung parang, alam niyo ba yung game dati na Clash of Clan? Meron kang clan, pwedeng magbate. Pwede ka din magtanim ng kung anong harvest ng mga tanim. Yung mga parang farm bill, yung mga ganon. So, madaming pwedeng mangyari sa loob ng ecosystem na Axie Infinity. Pero para ma-build mo ang economy na yon o patakbuhin ng maayos ang economy, kailangan mo ng population. Kahit gaano kaganda ang program, gaano kaganda ang mga establishment, gaano kaganda ang economy, kung wala namang population sa loob ng, sabi mo ng isang bansa na yon, hindi din tatakbo ng maayos. Kaya nakafocus sila din magpadami pa ng mga players o mga tao sa loob ng ecosystem. Mata-download mo na ang Axie Infinity sa App Store. 3 axis, matatry mo. Free to try na yon. In a sense na kung meron kang gustong kunin na mga scholars, ikaw ay manager, educated na yung mga tao na yun kasi na-try na sila sa App Store, nag-practice na sila for free version. Then pag kumpleto na ang population ng Axie Infinity ecosystem at saka yung mga developers, yung mga magde-develop ng mga let's say DeFi, staking, kung ano naman, iba-iba pang game, doon madali na lang papump ang SLP or something. Kaya long term talaga ang project na to. Okay, about sa RON naman, sa RON network na yan, andyan ang future. Mundo yan eh. RON network is mundo. So, kung ikaw ay developer, pwede kang gumawa ng iba-ibang project, iba-ibang bagay, third party ka man, kung ano ka man, doon sa RON na yun. Ang advice ko lang kung college ka at nanonood ka dito ngayon at nagpo-program ka, mag-aral ka ng Solidity. Programmer ka, mag-aral ka ng Solidity, pumasok ka sa Web3, that's a blockchain, then sa di sa Axie Infinity, mag-develop ka ng mga program, mga tools, mga project na makakatulong sa ecosystem ng Axie Infinity, then why not from the Philippines magkakaroon tayo ng developer under ng RON network na galing sa Pilipinas. So, I highly suggest na mag-aral ka ng Solidity, ma-connect ka sa RON network in the future at ikaw ang mag-develop ng good things. Hindi ko din masabi kung anong good things sa ecosystem. Ikaw ang mag-create. Example, some kind of tools na pwede mong gamitin yon, pambayad dun sa GCash, pambayad sa bills ng Globe, pambayad sa bills ng PLDT na nakakonect sa Ronin Wallet, or any kind of project na kaya mong i-develop na makakatulong sa Axie Infinity community natin, ecosystem na yan. So, in my side, anong kaya kong gawin? Mag-i-stick lang ako ng RON. So, ako naman, hindi naman ako programmer. So, what I can do in my part naman is i-stake ko yung RON ko. Un-stake ko muna pala, tapos yung RON at saka yung Ethereum, pagdidikitin ko, LP token, tapos i-stake ko yun para bigyan pa ako ng RON. So, gagawin ko lang to ng 2 years, 3 years, 2024-25, tignan natin pag na-develop na ang RON Chain Network, ano kaya ang mangyayari o what's the price o excited, di ba? Sa staking, mag-unstake naman ako ng mga 2 AXS. Unstake. 2 AXS, swap natin sa Ethereum. Yan, 2 AXS naging 0.0388158 Ethereum. Nakita mo to sa Katana, pupunta tayo dito. AXS wet kasi is 158% lang. Itong SLP at saka itong 540 per mataas. Ang total value lock naman nila 132k US dollar. Dito naman sa RON, konti lang. So sa tingin ko, mas mataas ang APR neto. Kaya gagawin natin ay RON wet LP token staking. Okay, let's go. So meron tayong 28 RON at saka 0.0388 wet. Punta tayo sa pool, add liquidity pool. Piliin mo yung RON at saka wet. Kung sino yung mas konti, yun ang imamax natin. In my case, wet. So, pindutin ko yung wet. Ayan. Pindutin natin yung supply. Tapos, confirm supply. Ayan na. Nagkaroon tayo ng 1.014 LP token ng RON and wet. Balik ka sa RON wet. Approve mo yan. Stake mo lang tapos max and stake. Confirm. Kung meron ka pang SLP dyan, gawin nyo na lang itong RON and wet. Mas the best yan. Hindi nga nila pinapakita pa.
The next thing I guess that I'll say is on the menu is Axie Infinity Origin, right? So this will be our latest upgrade. It's kind of like our third upgrade, third iteration of our battle system. It's going to be the largest upgrade ever, right? Like the art will be totally revamped and more beautiful. The animations, the battles will be faster. They'll be more real time. There will be more variation in the teams. Each Axie, instead of only having 4 cards, will have 6 cards. And most importantly, everyone will be able to download Axie Infinity in the app stores, get 3 free starter Axies, right? Get 3 free starter Axies without having to spend any money. Fall in love with the game, learn how to play the game, before having to make any big economic decisions, right? Even managers, right? Like people who are managing scholarships, they'll be able to basically pick from a pool of people who have already know how to play the game, who have already, right, like completed different kind of tutorials. I think it's going to be a huge it's going to be a huge shift for the entire mentality, right? How much easier it is to get into the game. It's going to be amazing. The other thing, right, is we're working on land game, right? So remember, I said that Axie isn't just one game. It's not just about the card battles. It's an entire universe of games. And we're also working on something that's kind of like a combination of Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, Clash of Clans, Rise of Kingdoms, right? Where you have land, you're harvesting resources on top of it, harvesting crops, building structures, fighting for control of territory, right? Like sending sending your Axies off into battle to fight for stuff. Like that is another thing that we're working on, and we hope to kind of like show more of our progress on that as well to the community this year. And then another thing is sorry, going on. We also just released our Axie Builders program, right? So our long-term vision is that Sky Mavis is never going to be able to build all of the experiences needed to satisfy a community of hundreds of millions of people. So what we need to do is get the best community developers, third-party developers into our ecosystem, right? Give them the ability to work with our art, work with the assets, and build stuff on top of the Axie universe, right? And that's actually how we get like a hyper scalable gaming ecosystem, right? Where we don't have to do all the work. Like if Axie relies on Sky Mavis indefinitely, then we're gonna fail. And that's actually how we've gotten to this point already, right? Like the community does all the marketing. It's 80% of the marketing for us, right? Where 80% of all users come from referrals. But we need to take that same concept and apply that as well to the development. It takes a little bit more time to do that. So I would say that's right. Like that, those are kind of the most important themes of 2022.
That's massive, man. That's like a bug bounty, but a fun bounty instead. I love that. And I didn't know that 80% of your users came from referrals. That's huge. I want to talk or ask, I guess, about the App Store thing. Two-part question, I guess. Number one, do you think you're going to run into issues with the App Stores because it's a blockchain-based game? I don't know how it's been for you in the past. I'm a Bored Ape holder, and they just released a game for Bored Ape holders, and they ran into tons of issues. I don't know what happened on the back end, but I know are you on the App Store already?
Yeah, this is a crazy thing, right? Is Axie has gotten to 2.5 million daily active users without being on app stores. I mean, we even created our own distribution channel, right, called Mavis Hub, right, which is basically on desktop, right? It's kind of like Steam for NFTs, NFT gaming. But yeah, like we think it's doable, right? Like we believe that we'll be on the app stores and that there are ways to make it work. So
Everyone always needs a new game on their phone. That's the one thing I
that's
can
one
tell
of the
you.
key things about Axie, right? That's one of the key things about Axie is that it's mobile friendly. Like people are spending more and more time on their phones, right? Like the trend is actually away from computers. Like computers, right? That's kind of like ancient technology, right? Like I like yeah, like phones I think are people are spending more and more time on their phones, and if you could, right, like if you could play a game, socialize, right? Like make friends, start a business, everything from right like hold your money, swap your money, all from a phone, right? Like I'm super bullish on right like crypto becoming mobile friendly. And also there are places in the world where right like everyone has a mobile phone, everyone has data and internet access, but they don't have desktops. I mean that's the thing, right, like that we've seen in the Philippines, right? Like there are people, right, like the famous pictures of like villages of people holding up their phones playing Axie, right? It's not about the computer.
I was
That's
just about to
huge.
say the same thing. I'd say, not everybody has a desktop. I mean, I didn't even get my first laptop until I went to college, and then for probably until I was 27 is when I bought my own computer. I never needed a laptop until then. And no one really needs it because everyone has a phone now. And like you just said, everyone, no matter where you are, you can get a cell signal, you can get some sort of signal, and it's all mobile friendly. And, you have to utilize to be mobile friendly. And that's awesome that you guys are doing that. And it's great that you're putting a lot of priority in that because, you're going to take over the space if you do.
Not to mention the 3 free Axies and the whole new ecosystem you're going to have. I mean, that just opens the floodgates to tons of new users who are just going to get, they're going to fall in love with
Oh,
the
yeah.
ecosystem that you built, which is huge.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, I
amazing.
talked
I've been
to
priced
one
out
of the
before.
early like product managers at Riot today, and he basically said, yeah, like just increase the top of the funnel as much as possible, like expose as many people to Axie as possible, build towards that because Axie is lovable. People love Axie. Axie is an amazing game, right? Like, so if we just get people through the door, they're gonna fall in love with it. A lot of them are going to get into this ecosystem and start spending for fun, which is actually what like sustains the economy, right? Like, this is a point that I have to make like more more often these days, right? Because people for during the entire hype cycle, right, they focused a lot on, okay, people can earn a living playing this game, right? What ultimately makes it sustainable is when people spend for fun, for utility within the ecosystem. And the the good news is that, right, Axies are beautiful. People love Axies, and right, like the roadmap for unlocking more of that emotion, more of that spending, is crystal clear for us.
Yeah, I just Googled while you were saying that. I Googled Supercell's net annual. What's the word? What did I type? Annual profit. And if you don't know, Supercell is a mobile game company. They make Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. They're probably the biggest out there. They're making $2.5 billion on in-app purchases a year, and and you don't earn money. You can't earn money playing these games.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, like what is the problem, right? Like the problem is that gamers spend $180 million a year on stuff that they don't own, right? But we actually know what could happen if people actually own their things. Why? Because you actually own your Pokemon cards in a way that you don't own your digital items, right? So Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering cards, these are actually, right, like we're just giving the properties of physical collectibles and physical kind of game items to digital game items where you actually own them and there's a secondary market, right? Like people will spend $50,000 on a Charizard, right? Just because they need it, but because there is liquidity, right? That justifies the spending, right? So I think like that is the future. That is the archetype of person that's going to make this and make these digital economies work.
no question. That is the most bullish thing I've ever heard. I never even thought about, or I didn't know about the expansion to mobile. But I mean, just thinking of the possibilities of how many people are going to be onboarded, not only to your ecosystem, but that's going to be a gateway to cryptocurrency as a whole. I mean, once they start learning blockchain and claiming their prizes, or wanting to upgrade their Axies, they're going to need to use the blockchain, I'm assuming. And it's just going to, I think the user base, based on that alone, if the game does well, which I'm sure it will, is going to be astronomical for crypto growth. That's huge. Good on you. Brian, you agree with me?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, like this whole time. I mean, it's yeah, there's really nothing even to add to that. I mean, it's 100%. You're right.
Yeah, I think it's seriously going to scale up the adoption of cryptocurrency.
I mean,
And
that's the path forward, right? That's the path forward. This is gonna be a hard journey, right? Like, I don't, I really, like, there are gonna be risks. It's gonna be super hard, But the path forward, I think, is crystal clear. We just need to deliver on the roadmap. We just need to stay united as a community. We can't fight over random stuff. We need to stay focused with our eyes on the prize. Everyone, right? Like, I played football growing up. The Axie community is a team. Everyone has a role. Everyone has something that they can do to help the game succeed. It's the first game, it's the first system I've ever encountered like that. Right, like wherever it's like almost like a football team, right? Why do I use the term football? Because football is like the only game where if you, right, like if you step to the wrong side, like the person next to you is going to get blown up. Like that's also the dynamic in the Axie community, right? Everyone has a role that they need to fulfill, and if they do that, everyone is going to win alongside them.
No question. The power is with the community. And no matter what the project or protocol or company or team, it's always about working together. And it sounds by what you're saying that the community, the Axie community, is super tight knit. I love that. Proud of you guys. With that said, for the last 10 minutes, I figured we could open the floor to some questions from the community. So, Jen, I'll need you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I got you.
Awesome.
Brian Litton, the floor is yours. How's it going, Brian?
Hey, Brian.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, did you have a question for Jiho?
Yeah, trying to figure out how to frame it. But yeah, so my brother and I run a guild. We have about 60 scholars, and was curious on if so. One of the big things for me is I'm super into blockchain gaming, super pumped about the future. One of the big things for me is the sustainable of the economy of blockchain gaming. So in this case, obviously Axie Infinity. I was curious, Jihos, if you guys have had like an economist on your team. Are you hiring an economist? And what your plans are for Axie sinks moving forward, essentially, and sustainability in the Axie economy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the good news, right? Like, so yeah, we we have an economics team. We just made some key hires that are going to really help out with the economy. That, to be honest, the game economists or the economists, they come to us when they're writing their PhDs or their master's theses, right? Because a lot of this stuff has never been done before. So I think like we are the experts in many cases, for better or for worse, on a lot of this stuff. But the good news is also that, right, like a lot of these digital economies, in-game economies, have also been running for a long time. So there are, right, like there are so many examples of resource sinks that we can look at to see, right, like what do people actually want to spend their hard-earned in-game resources on, right? So a lot of that is, okay, like things like part upgrades, cosmetics, emojis, right? Like you just look at like how do these games make money? How do they encourage spending? And a lot of that, can be applied to Axie, right? So yeah, I think it just takes some time to build those features. In the beginning, we chose to prioritize growth. Why? Well, one of the reasons is, does it make sense to start allowing, right, like a community of 5,000 people, even 500 people, to start upgrading their Axies before the game is like fully rolled out? And then you have all these people who come in and say, like these other people, they started the game way before us. They were able to upgrade their stuff, right? They feel there's like this sense that they missed out, right? So I think it's much healthier for us to have prioritized growth in the beginning over some of these other economic sinks, and then apply the economic sinks, right? Like once we have a player base of millions of people, once the product is ready for prime time, right? So Yeah. So so basically the answer is right, like things like Axie part upgrades, being able to add like modifiers like runes and charms and things like that to your Axies, right? These are things that have clear precedent in other game economies where people are right spending resources, right? Like I mean, in World of Warcraft, gold actually did have right like a black market or a gray market value, yet people still spent their gold on a bunch of different stuff, right? Same thing with RuneScape. So yeah, same thing with Neopets, right? So we do have a lot of predecessors that we can draw on for inspiration when we're designing these things.
Got it. Okay. So essentially it sounds like the team that you guys have currently is kind of handling the economics. Yeah, I guess I'm just curious because it seems like obviously SLP there's obviously it's pretty inflationary. Axies were 100% inflationary up until the recent release of the Axie Sync. And I guess, and I know that the team has communicated, which to some degree makes sense, that you want enough Axies so that new people can come in. But the way I look at it, and this might be wrong, but is if you release an Axie Sync, you allow for a more sustainable economy, which can balance itself out over time. And you don't have this like rampant inflation in Axies, right?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the so like the blessing and the curse of SLP is that right, it was able to auto scale as we went through exponential growth, but it didn't auto descale as growth slowed, right? So the next steps are around right, like basically getting SLP, for example, mint and burn, uh, kind of like relatively in line with each other, right? So there are two paths, there are two ways to do that. And I think like the final, what we need to do is actually right, like actually both, where right, like you're lowering issuance and also increasing burn, right? So lowering issuance, things like right, getting rid of the SLP from adventure mode and the daily quest, but then also yeah, of course, like adding in syncs like cosmetics, uh, part upgrades, um, emojis, stickers, maybe even Axie pets, things like that, as well, right? So it's a dual process. The thing is that right, like with Origin coming, right, like does it make sense to add? It didn't make sense to basically add a lot of these additional burn mechanisms to the current game. So we're in right now. We're in a little bit of an awkward phase, right? Where we're waiting for Origin. Uh, and right, like the mint to burn ratio is definitely right out of control, where there's like 4x more SLP being minted per day than being burned. So yeah, that's basically how we're thinking about it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for adjusting that. Yeah. Super bullish in the team, believe in the future. Definitely think economic sustainability is of pretty important for the Axie success moving forward. But it sounds like you guys are definitely thinking about that. So yeah, super pumped to see what we get in the future. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. And yeah, good luck to your guild, your scholars, your 60 scholars, sending them strength.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian, for your question. I see we have Nino. Floor is now yours. Hey there. How's it going?
I'm just sitting back and just. Oh, you talking to me or?
I'm talking to the person we just brought up. But David, while I
Okay.
bring someone else up, why don't you tell me how you're doing? And if you have any questions for Jiho.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
a
just
little
listening.
stage fright.
Even the questions that I wanted to ask, he's already answered. So, I mean, like for me personally, play to earn is the future, and I'm just enjoying the session. It's like the one time that I don't like. I'm talkative, but I don't want to talk because I just want to go ahead and listen, especially like about the future of your platform. Like I'm waiting for somebody to ask that, but like the future, like your personal roadmap, like what you're thinking about, how you're going to take it to the next level and keep it fresh.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of it is around upgrading the gameplay, making it more fun, making it more beautiful, right? Like one of the ways to look at Axie is right, their collectibles, their art, and their game characters, all kind of all wrapped in one. So I think like part of it is just elevating that, making sure that right, like we really put the infinity in Axie Infinity, where right there's a ton of different things and experiences that you can access with your Axies, right? Like each Axie is a ticket to a world full of experiences, right? If you look at Axie as a theme park, right? Like what is the cost, and how do you make the cost of three Axies uh it's like sustainable, right? Like part of it is just like adding more fun, adding more utility, more rides into that theme park. So through building stuff ourselves alongside the community, but then another aspect of it is right, like really enabling the community to build alongside us. That's right, like what the builders program was. And then yeah, like in terms of Ronin, right? Like what we want to do is like we look at Steam a lot. In the early days of Steam, it was a very manual process, right? Where you had to right, like work closely with Steam to kind of get integrated and to get listed on Steam. But then over time, it got opened up. So that's the path forward that we see for Ronin as well. The cool thing too is that right, like because we have the blockchain payments aspect, right, like your Ronin wallet, right, that can be something like your Google Pay, right, where you can in the future you should be able to log in to e-commerce platforms with your Ronin wallet and pay for goods and services straight from your Ronin wallet using in-game currency that you earned by playing Axie Infinity.
Yes, I wanted to add something.
Go for it, my man.
So, with everything coming up soon, with 2021 being one of our highest ever, what problems do you see coming next? Like, do you think, from a standpoint of the government, that they don't want people, how do I say it, like necessarily making money off of games and not paying for it, taxes?
So yeah, this is a thing, right? Like where right, like we've gotten to a point where we're super big and governments are starting to take you know look into it. Like we've said that, right, like if your government like requires that you pay taxes on earnings from digital assets and this kind of stuff, then right, like yeah, we should make it super easy for you guys to pay your taxes, and we encourage you to pay your taxes, right? So, but yeah, it's not going to be easy, right? Like there are big enemies that are against this. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the problems and a lot of the challenges just come from within, right? Like, can we stay united as a community? Are we going to just fight each other? Right? Can we weather hard times? Um, so yeah, I think a lot of all we can do is control, right, how hard we work, whether we stay united, whether we understand the vision. Uh, I think the only thing that we can do is worry about the things that we can control. So I think there's plenty to do when we think about that, and right, the other stuff, right, like it's gonna come, and we have to be united against the enemies as they come against us. But there is a lot of work to be done, and just in terms of like building and creating an amazing community.
I really love that. As you mentioned before, I know one time you said it's a war against centralization and decentralization right now. So we just kind of have to endure it while we can, And I love that. Thank you, Geos.
Thanks, man.
All right. Jiho, do you mind if we take a couple more questions? We have 18 hands raised. I know we might not be able to get through all of them, but if you don't mind staying on for a couple more minutes, we can see how many we can bang through.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Donut, welcome on up. Mr. Donut, you might need to unmute your mic in the bottom left-hand corner there.
Hello, is my mic on now?
Yeah, it is.
All
There
right.
you go.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry. So, real quick question. With the recent release in Ron or Roan, there's a few different ways of pronouncing it, I guess. But so is this something that will help address any of the, I guess, economical aspects of SLP? Because I can imagine when I was looking at the details of it, if you have, I think it was one Axie, you get 3 free transactions per day. But then there's a lot of scholars who don't actually have Axies in their accounts that they're receiving SLP in. But then, of course, they have the ability to swap that SLP and for RON that they may need in order to do transactions. So, yeah, I don't know if